more often than not, dialogue between characters is going to be more meaningful than having your character blow up a building. Dialogue can be very impactful, and there's a lot of styles of writing like romance that can be just driven by dialogue. You can even have fantasy that's just driven by dialogue. I loved the anime Dot Hack back in the day, like back when I was in high school, and like anime was like such an obscure thing that very few people knew. I loved Dot Hack. It was the series Dot Hack Sign that I followed the most closely, and something that I didn't notice until someone brought it up was I was talking to someone that liked more actiony type anime, and anime has a lot of different genres to it, and they said that they were disgusted with Dot Hack. And imagine teenage me going, "Wait, how could you hate my favorite anime? Dot Hack Sign is such a good anime." And there's a sort of youthful naivete that you can have where I'd never encountered the idea of being sucked into a virtual reality video game, feeling like you're actually there in the 3D space, and pretty deep themes about humanity and like the human soul in Dot Hack Sign, of a soul being trapped in a video game, where that was really interesting to me. And that was the first time that I'd encountered any of those ideas. So there's a certain beauty that goes along with being naive, being fresh to certain ideas that you haven't experienced before. Even if someone that's older and more jaded would be like, "Oh yeah, that's already been done." So I was talking with a friend who criticized Dot Hack Sign because there's very little action, and it's not action heavy, and it's dialogue and character driven, and it's very exploration driven. That's another thing where with like VR worlds and everything, you can just go to a different world that expresses your mood better. That can really help set the tone of a conversation. Like the most common thing that would happen is if you're trying to have a serious conversation with someone and you're like at a clubbing world, you would want to switch to a private world that's quieter, where there's lots of like home worlds, like cozy house worlds, that are very good for just talking in. But like if you are trying to give someone like a sense of wonder, then like coming around to a place where there's all these lights going on and it looks very beautiful, it's inspiring in a certain way. The environment that you are around affects your emotions on an unconscious level. This is something that I was writing about, a conversation that I was editing, where both of the characters are talking about how things that you surround yourself with influence your mental state. And a lot of people don't realize this, but for both of these characters, because they are espers, they have extrasensory perception, they have to be very focused in order to get into this altered state of mind, where if there's something that's disrupting them, if there's something that's interfering with their capability to focus, then that's going to mess up the experience. And like the main character is kind of a psychic detective, he would not be able to see what he's trying to see because there's going to be other he wouldn't be able to focus on a target. But this whole thing, this whole scene that's going on, is just two characters talking in an airport lounge, basically. But they don't know if they can trust them or not. And so there's this kind of back and forth with this anxiety there. So even with just characters talking, even though I have 3 chapters that are back to back to back, it's just characters talking. There's no like fighting going on. There's no surreal stuff. It's more of a psychological thriller. So there's no surreal stuff going on. There's no like mind-bending perception twists. There is towards the end of this chapter, actually. There's some perceptual twists that go on. I definitely would not recommend being overly focused on you got to have all action all the time with stuff going on and whiz bang boom. Oh well, this is just how you write commercial fiction. I don't think people are genuinely interested in that. The what makes a compelling story is being able to have an immersive experience. And when you're shoehorning stuff in, just for the sake of like, oh, this makes more things happen. One thing, you're going to have to like change your plot to revolve around that. You're not going to be able to get a lot of character development. The other thing is that there are going to be people who really enjoy character development, and that's what would drive them to the story. And that's something where, like with discussions of marketing, everything like that, your mileage may vary with who says what's online for what's good writing, what's good style, what's a good marketing technique. You really have to consider other factors that are there than just make a lot of stuff happen because that's what sells. I genuinely think that like compelling, character-driven, conversational stuff is marketable and will do very well. It's just a lot of people are very bad at it, don't have a lot of experience like actually putting in the hours of writing and actually understanding how to make an interesting conversation go back and forth. I just need to have more confidence where I've done thousands and thousands of scenes at this point where I understand how to make that dynamic occur. I've put in the hours to it. Where the big thing for me now is getting a lot of feedback so that I know when I run into certain hitches where I'm trying to convey some kind of feeling or another, but I don't know how your average reader would interpret what's going on. And so part of me like focusing on like a whole bunch of possibilities and all of this is I would end up adding sentence tags or like little intermissions of narration in between dialogue tags where sometimes it's good, but other times it's just like reading back through it. Some people would be like, where did this come from? Why is this out there? It's just a compulsion. It's just a bloody compulsion that I have to write certain details out. So I have a demonstration of that. But one thing that's off the top of my head is I'm describing the setting of this cafe that the characters are at, and I wanted to say that there's a cobblestone floor, but it's smoothed over with epoxy to take out any of the inconvenient roughness. That's a good, and that also gets at the whole metaphor that they end up going on into about how like modernity makes everything like clean and crisp in a way that it loses touch with the roughness of nature. And there's something else that's lost with that, kind of escapes direct explanational. That's good enough as a description. But I added on top of that one of these stupid things I added. It must make cleaning up spills easier, making the job of the cafe workers that much simpler to do. I had something like that it didn't really add anything to the conversation, but like in the context of the larger page that I was reading, it just jumped out as, yeah, we can get rid of this. So sometimes when reading back, I can recognize when something feels really shoehorned, and other times you really do need someone else's perspective to properly get a feel for whether or not something fits and makes a compelling story. So far with a lot of the dialogue things, that's what people have responded to the most is these are really engaging conversations. These are really engaging like character interactions that are creating a feeling of mystery and anxiety, which that's the genre that I'm going for. So that's really good, and it's driven by the characters. In the larger sense, when I was going back for my first round of edits, when I was going back, there were not several, but there were a few of these plot points where it's like, oh, big actiony thing happens, where the whole scene is just shoehorned, where it's like I had that happen just so I could have drama occur, where there would be plot holes or whatever, where I would end up going on this meandering thing of like justifying here's how this works there, but like just the whole chunk of everything is like, no, we can get rid of that. We're not trying to make action happen for action's sake, even though I feel like I'm telling a whole lot. And that's what this whole big discussion that we're having here came from. It's talking about how do you show and not tell. We're doing things that are more actiony or easier to show. But if characters are just talking, then technically they're just telling everything. But you can have very compelling experiences come through those character interactions as well if it's done well.